The child did not remember King's Landing. When she tried, when some stray sound of steel on stone in the yard or the dull glow of torchlight along the walls nudged at the back of her mind, all she found were shadows and the echo of a woman's voice singing in a tongue no one in the north spoke. Winterfell was all she knew. Gray stone and white snow, the smell of smoke and dogs, the low, distant thunder of the hot springs beneath the keep. On the night Eddard Stark brought her home, the wind howled like wolves around the towers, and the snow was coming in sideways. Robb and Jon pressed together at the gatehouse, two boys with reddened cheeks and wet hair poking out beneath their hoods. Robb bounced on his heels to keep warm. Jon stood very still, dark eyes fixed on the slow line of riders ghosting out of the storm. "There," Robb breathed. "Father." The man at the head of the column rode with shoulders bent to the wind, his great cloak a sheet of white fur crusted with ice, his face half hidden behind a scarf. When he drew near, the boys could see how weary he was, the lines at the corners of his eyes deeper than they had been when he left for the south. In the crook of one arm he carried a small bundle, swaddled in fur and wool. The bundle squirmed as the horse came to a halt. A small hand pushed free, pale as milk, fingers grasping at the cold air. The hand was wrong, Jon thought before he knew why. Everyone he knew was raw and ruddy from the chill. This child looked as if she had never seen the sun. Maester Luwin hurried forward in a swirl of gray robes. "My lord, the ravens said you were 3 days out yet." "Storm blew us faster," Eddard Stark said, his voice hoarse. "The mountain passes were bad. Have rooms prepared for the men. They're half frozen. The girl will need warmth and food." Robb seized upon that. "The girl," he echoed, edging closer. "Is that?" His father looked at him then, and whatever Robb had meant to say died on his tongue. There was something in Lord Stark's eyes that made even the guards go quiet. A heavy, haunted look that Jon had seen only once before, when the Raven had brought word of Brandon and Rickard Stark's deaths, years after the fact. "This child is a ward of House Stark," Eddard said at last. "She will be raised here as one of our own. There will be no questions. Do you understand?" The words were for the guards as much as for his sons. They bowed, murmured assent. Jon said nothing. Robb nodded too quickly, eager to please. "What's her name?" he asked. Eddard Stark hesitated, and if anyone had been watching closely they might have seen the flicker of conflict there, the moment of choosing. "Daena," he said. "Daena Snow. She is a victim of the war. That is all you need know." The little girl blinked up at them as she was carried inside. Wide violet eyes ringed with red from the cold, lashes crusted with frost. Her hair slipped free of the hood for a heartbeat. Not the brown or black or russet of Winterfell, but a pale, strange silver, like moonlight caught in water. Jon stared, caught between curiosity and something he did not have a word for. She looked like no one he had ever seen, not even in the Maester's dusty books. She looked like she had been born from the snow itself, a little shard of winter with eyes the color of summer dusk. As they followed their father into the warmth of the hall, Robb leaned close. "She's smaller than Sansa was," he whispered, as if that were the only odd thing about her. "You think she'll cry?" "She's not crying now," Jon said, and the girl turned her head at the sound of his voice, as if she heard him over the creak of saddles and the mutter of men. Her gaze met his, steady and unafraid, and something in Jon's chest tightened. He knew what it was to arrive at Winterfell as a question no one would answer. Later, in the great hall, Catelyn Stark watched her lord place the child at his left hand, far from the head of the table but on the dais all the same. Servants laid trenchers before her, poured her a small cup of watered ale. The little thing's fingers shook as she lifted the bread. She was so tired that her head nodded over her meal, yet every time her eyes closed she jerked awake, as if afraid of what waited in sleep. Catelyn's gaze found her husband's, and in it she asked 100 questions she did not voice. He gave her only that same grim, distant look. When the meal was done and the men dispersed, when the roar of their talk had dwindled to a low murmur, he came to her chambers smelling of snow and horse and the cold far south, and told her the truth by the light of a single candle. "A Targaryen," she whispered when he was done. "Ned, you brought a Targaryen to Winterfell. Our king has a long memory when it comes to dragons," Eddard said, "and a shorter mercy. Robert would have her head on a spike by the gates if he knew she lived." Catelyn looked to the sleeping children in the adjoining chamber, their soft breaths slow and untroubled. "And what of his mercy for us, if he learns you lied to him?" "The girl has no one," he said quietly. "No father, no brother. Her house is ashes and songs. I will not see another child murdered for a war that ended years ago." The wind whistled at the shutters. Somewhere below, in the hall, a small silver-haired girl turned in her sleep and murmured in a language no one there understood. Outside, the snow kept falling, wrapping Winterfell in white. Years passed, and the child from the storm became another thread in Winterfell's tapestry. Daena Snow learned to walk on flagstones slick with rime, to run with the direwolf pups in the yard until her cheeks were flushed crimson and her eyes laughing. Robb claimed her as sister from the first. Sansa, with her careful courtesies, taught her to sew clumsy stitches that always went crooked. Arya, wild and stubborn, taught her how to climb where she ought not climb and scrape knees where her septa could not see. Jon taught her how to fall. "You tuck your shoulder," he said, when she lay on her back in the godswood with the breath knocked out of her, staring up at the canopy of red leaves. "Or you'll break your arm if you land wrong." She tested the words on her tongue. "Tuck my shoulder," she repeated, and sat up, hair full of leaf litter. In the dappled light beneath the weirwood, she looked like some strange forest creature, pale and sharp against all that dark bark and snow. "You sound like father." Jon flushed a little at that, but his mouth quirked. "Then maybe you should listen." They tried again. The roots of the old trees twisted up from the earth in great knotted ropes, perfect for scrambling, for leaping down. Daena climbed higher each time, fearless, arms and legs sure despite the bite of the cold. Jon followed, slower, more cautious. Bastards had less room for mistakes, he had learned. When she jumped, she laughed. When she fell, she rolled. And though the breath still whooshed out of her, she came up grinning. "Better?" she asked, brushing snow off her mittens. "Better," he allowed. They walked together then beneath the carved face of the heart tree. Its eyes seemed to follow them, sap-red tears frozen along the grooves of its cheeks. Daena always felt watched in this place, not in the way of courtyards and corridors, where servants and guards measured her with their eyes, but in some deeper, quieter way. It was as if the tree itself listened. "Do you think the old gods know my name?" she asked very seriously. "Why wouldn't they?" Jon said, surprised. "You're here. You're you." She scuffed at the snow with the toe of her boot. "No one else looks like me," she said. "Old Nan says I must have a Crannogman somewhere in my blood, but she only laughs when she says it. When we went to the harvest feast at Barrowton, all the men there stared. Mother said it was because I was from a different house. But I'm not. I'm a Snow." The word sat awkwardly between them. Jon had worn it all his life, a second skin that chafed no matter how often he grew. To hear it on her tongue was strange. "You're still father's," he said at last. "That's what matters. Why? Do you not like your name?" She looked up at him with those unsettling eyes. "Sometimes I dream another name." Jon frowned. "What name?" She hesitated, lips shaping the sound silently. "I don't know," she said, but there was a crease between her brows that did not smooth out. "It's like a song on the edge of hearing. And I dream." Her voice dropped. "Fire," she admitted. "And wings. A shadow over a city. If I told Mother, she would say I had too much honey before bed. If I told Sansa, she'd tell old Nan, and I'd never hear the end of it." "You can tell me," Jon said. The words came out more earnest than he meant, but once spoken they could not be taken back. "I won't laugh. I dream things too, sometimes." Her gaze flicked to him, quick and bright. "Do you? Of places I've never been. Of men I've never met. Sometimes of a woman's voice crying his name. Not the name he wore, but another, softer sound, lost when he woke. He did not say that part. "They're only dreams." Daena nodded, but she glanced back at the heart tree thoughtfully, as if the red leaves whispered secrets just for her. A gust of wind set them rustling, and for a heartbeat Jon thought he heard something too, a whisper in a language too old for the maester's books. They raced back to the yard when the bells rang the midday meal. Robb shoved Jon's shoulder. Jon cuffed him in return. Arya darted between them like a quick shadow, and Daena, silver hair flying, kept pace with them all. No one looking would have thought her anything but another Stark child. Loud and laughing, boots muddy, hands scarred from practiced swords. Only when she washed for supper and caught sight of herself in the small, slightly warped looking glass did the difference return. Did she see pale hair and the measured way mother's eyes lingered on it, as if counting each silver strand. The first time Daena saw her own strangeness written in ink, she was 11. Maester Luwin's chambers smelled of parchment and melted candle wax and the faint, sharp tang of some potion he brewed for Eddard Stark's aching knee. The maester sat at his desk, small and round and balding beneath his chain, scratching away at a letter. Daena curled up on the window seat with a book, as she often did in the long dark of winter, when the days were short and the snows too deep for much practice in the yard. History of the Reign of Aerys II. The spine read. It had a crack in the leather from much use, though she could not recall anyone asking for it before. Perhaps Robb, when he had begun to speak of duty in the grave, earnest way he had lately. Perhaps father. She opened it at random, from boredom more than curiosity, and found a drawing that made her throat go tight. For figures on a page, sketched in fine, careful lines. A tall man with hair like pale gold and a harp in his hands. Another with a cruel tilt to his mouth and something wild in his eyes, and between them a woman, dark-haired, with a crown of winter roses. At the top of the page, written in the maester's hand, were 3 words: Rhaegar Targaryen, Lyanna Stark. But it was the 4th figure that held her. A little girl bent over a dragon's skeletal skull. Her hair so pale the ink had barely touched the parchment. Her eyes indicated with 2 small strokes of violet. Daenerys Targaryen, the caption read. The last. Daena stared until the edges of the page blurred. She closed the book with fingers that trembled and shoved it back onto the shelf. When she turned, she found Maester Luwin watching her over the rim of his spectacles. "You read quickly, child," he said mildly. "I wasn't," she swallowed. "I was only looking at the drawings." "Ah," he gestured for her to come closer. "There are many drawings there which do no good to dwell on. The days of dragons are done." She thought of her dreams, of heat so fierce it seared the skin from her bones, of wings beating a storm over a burning city. "Did the dragons die?" she asked. He sighed. "Because all things die, child. Even houses that think themselves eternal. Dragons were a terror once, yes, but also a kind of balance. When they dwindled, the lords of Westeros remained, with all their quarrels and ambitions and little gods. It is men, not beasts, that undo the world." She thought of her dreams again, of those shadowed wings. Did the Targaryens? Did they all die? "Most," Luwin said. He picked up a different book, one bound in cracked blue leather. "The last king, his children, his grandchildren. The war was thorough, but such things are for older ears than yours. Close the book, Daena. The ravens bring enough dark tales." She heard the lie in that too, but said nothing. She slipped away before he could ask which page she had opened, feeling as if someone had replaced her bones with glass. Her footsteps echoed too loudly in the corridor. The torches seemed to hiss as she passed. In her chamber she stood before the little looking glass until her breath fogged the surface. Silver hair, pale brows, violet eyes, darker than the ones in the drawing, but close enough that her stomach turned. Daenerys Targaryen, the last. The name walked through her like the step of some great beast. She whispered it once, very softly, and flinched, as if someone might hear through stone. When she dreamt that night, she saw men in steel armor painted with stags and lions, crashing together in streets full of blood. She saw a tall man with haunted eyes holding a baby wrapped in bloody linen, and another child with pale hair weeping as flames climbed the walls. Then the vision slid and blurred, and she was a bird high above it all, her wings beating the smoke into shapes. When she woke, she had bitten through her own lip. She tasted copper on her tongue and lay listening to the winter wind clawing at the shutters, thinking of history books and names no one spoke at table. In the morning, she braided her hair back and went out to the yard, where Jon was already at practice with Robb and Theon. "You're late," Theon called. "Afraid of the cold, little lady? Afraid of your face," she said, snatching up a blunted sword. The banter steadied her. Steel met steel, and with each blow the feeling of glass-bone fragility receded, replaced by something hotter, sharper. As they crossed blades, she thought of the name written on the page, of the way Maester Luwin's mouth had tightened, and wondered for the first time if the life she'd been given was not the only one that belonged to her. The questions pressed harder with each passing year, like snow building on a roof until the weight threatened to crack the beams. Daena was 12 when she cornered her father. No, she corrected herself, Lord Stark. In the godswood. The distinction had always been there in the way others spoke, in the missing word on the steward's careful tongue. But in her heart he remained father, the same man who had shown her how to hold a sword and how to measure the clouds to guess a storm. He knelt in the snow before the heart tree, his head bowed, his dark hair streaked with the first strands of gray. The river of the hot springs steamed faintly where it cut through the godswood, sending mist curling about his boots. He did not turn when she approached. Perhaps he had heard her steps long before she dared draw nearer. "Lord Stark," she began, because bravery did not always look like marching into a shield wall. Sometimes it was choosing the more difficult word. His shoulders stiffened. Slowly he rose and faced her. His face was lined deeper than it had been on the night he rode in from the storm, but his eyes were the same, clear and gray and full of thoughts he rarely spoke. "Daena," he said, "you startled me." "I'm sorry," she lied. "I needed to speak with you." Something in her tone must have reached him. He gestured to a fallen log beside the frozen pool. She sat. He remained standing, rubbing his gloved thumb along the pommel of his sword, as if considering whether steel would answer better than words. "The Maester has you reading weighty things of late," he said at last. "Robb complains he's forever wrestling you from the library to the yard." "It wasn't Maester Luwin," she said. "Not only him." The words tangled in her throat, but she forced them out. "Father, I know you told us not to ask, but my parents, who were they?" Snow fell from a branch with a soft thump, startling a raven into flight. Its wings beat a ragged rhythm above them before it vanished into the dark of the trees. Eddard Stark closed his eyes. For a moment she thought he would refuse her outright. He had done so before with a gentleness that felt like a wall. "Some things are better left in peace," he had said, when Arya asked after Jon's mother. "Sleeping wolves must not be prodded." Now, though, he looked older than she had ever seen him, as if the question had added years in the span of a breath. "They were people who made mistakes," he said slowly, "who lived and died in a time when all the world seemed bent on destroying itself." "That is not an answer," she said, and heard Arya's stubbornness in her own voice. "I have hair no one else has, as no one else has. When we went to White Harbor last year, a dockhand crossed himself when I passed. I hear the songs the men sing in the hall when they think I'm Abed, about a mad king and dragons and wildfire. I see the pictures in the Maester's books. Am I one of them?" His jaw clenched. "What did Luwin tell you?" "That I might have a grandmother from the Vale," she said, almost laughing for how feeble it sounded now. "But the books say only one house ever had hair like mine. The Dragon Kings, the Targaryens." The word hung between them, heavy as a headsman's axe. Lord Stark stared up at the heart tree, as if the old gods might carve the right answer in the red grooves of its face. When he looked back at her, his eyes shone. "You are my daughter," he said. "Whatever blood runs in your veins, whatever names were spoken over your cradle before you came to my hall, That is what I claim and what I will answer for. But the truth, she pressed. Please. He opened his mouth, closed it again. For a heartbeat, she saw something raw break through the winter-hard mask he wore. A young man beside a bloody bed, a promise on his lips, the weight of a kingdom's lies settling across his shoulders. Not yet, he whispered. You are a child still. I am almost a woman grown, she said hotly. Sansa will be betrothed soon. Robb speaks of bannermen. Jon thinks of the wall. I will not live my life as a ghost in your hall, Lord Stark. Tell me whose shadow I wear. A wind rose, cutting through her cloak, making her eyes water. He studied her, and she thought he might send her away. Instead, he sank down onto the log beside her, gloved hands folded between his knees. When the snows melt, he said hoarsely, and the king rides north to see old friends, things may change. There are truths that cannot be put back in the ground once you've dug them up. She frowned. King Robert is coming? I have had a raven. He sounded tired. He means to ask something of me. It will mean changes for us all. The thought of a king in Winterfell was dizzying. All the stories she knew of Robert Baratheon painted him as larger than life. A warrior with a hammer like a falling star, a laugh that could shake rafters. But her mind snagged on his other words. When the king comes, she said slowly, I will be older by a season only. Will that make such a difference to the truth? He managed a small smile that did not reach his eyes. You are already too old and too clever by half. She almost smiled back, but the ache in her chest was too deep. I dream of a different name, she said softly. I dream of fire. If the king comes and sees me, will he know me? His hand tightened over hers. He will see a northern girl, he said. In gray and white, a child of my house. That is what you must be, Daena. For your sake. For all our sakes. He rose abruptly then, as if the talk had gone further than he meant. Come, he said. The cooks will have my head if we are late to table, and Arya will have eaten all the stew. She followed him back through the drifting snow, feeling the weight of the unsaid like stones in her pockets. The old gods watched them go with carved, bleeding eyes, and the wind hissed through the branches as if it knew a Kingsroad was already forming far to the south, carrying with it all the answers Eddard Stark feared to give. The year before King Robert came, Winterfell's hall was fuller than Daena had ever seen it. Lord Glover and his sons arrived with a handful of men to speak of bandits on the Wolfswood Road. Lady Mormont came herself rather than sending a sworn shield, a squat, fierce woman with hands that looked as if they'd sooner strangle a bear than so. Their presence turned an ordinary feast into something that felt almost like the great gatherings old men spoke of, before war and famine thinned the north. Fires roared in the hearths. Hounds wove between the tables, snapping up dropped bones. The smell of spiced wine and roasting boar wrestled with the ever-present tang of wet wool and smoke. Minstrels played in the corner, their fingers red from the cold between songs. Daena sat between Robb and Jon on the dais, the place that had become hers by unspoken custom. Below, the hall stretched away in a sea of rough faces and furs. Every so often she caught a man staring and felt that old itch between her shoulder blades. Robb nudged her with his elbow. You're scowling, he murmured. You'll sour the ale. I'm thinking, she said. That's worse. He grinned when she glared, then leaned forward as one of the Glover boys boasted of felling a wild boar with a single spear. Sansa, further down the table, listened with wide eyes, her hands folded just so on the table, while Arya mimed stabbing motions behind a goblet, making Jon choke on his drink. Mind yourself, Catelyn Stark said, though Daena could see the corner of her mouth twitching. She had grown used to the oddness of this household in the years since a silver-haired girl arrived in a snowstorm. Sometimes, watching the Lady of Winterfell move among her children with more warmth than she had shown at the start, Daena let herself believe that habit might be kin to love. When the hedgerow singer began a familiar ballad, The Bells of King's Landing, with its verses about wildfire and bells tolling over blood-slick stones, the hall quieted. Men leaned on their elbows, faces intent, caught by the story as much as by the melody. Daena gripped her cup hard enough that her fingers ached. "We'll burn them all." The song went, the voice thinning at the high notes. "We'll burn them in their homes." She saw again the drawing in Luwin's book. The little girl bent over a dragon skull. Golden-haired princes, a mad king with wildfire in his eyes, the rebel lord with a hammer. "Do you want him to stop?" Jon's voice came low beside her. He must have seen the way her shoulders tensed. "No," she said, though part of her did. "If songs are all that's left, I'd hear them." He studied her a moment, then turned his attention back to the singer, but his hand remained near hers on the table, close enough that she could have reached for it without anyone noticing. The singer slid into another verse about a princess in a tower and a knight in black armor. Daena's thoughts drifted. Lord Glover's eldest was watching her again, his gaze lingering too long. He had that look she'd seen on other men of late, the one that weighed her not as a girl in gray but as something to be bargained for. A wife, a bed, an alliance. She shifted closer to Robb, who was deep in talk with Great Jon Umber about the merits of different sword grips. "Do you think father will marry me to one of them?" she asked quietly. Robb blinked, dragged from the clamor of boasts. "To a Glover or an Umber?" "Why?" "Because I'm useful," she said. "Because houses trade daughters like promises." His expression shifted. The boyish ease slipped, and for a heartbeat she saw the man he was becoming. "You're not a coin," he said. "Father would never." "Father will do what he must for the North," she said, echoing a phrase she had heard 100 times. "If that means sending me to some hall I've never seen, to lie with a man who looks at me like Glover's son does." Her stomach turned. It was not the marriage bed that frightened her. She knew what happened there from whispered giggles in the girl's solar, from old Nan's more ribald tales. It was the idea of being uprooted, torn from stone she knew as she knew her own hands, and planted God's nowhere. "You're ours," Robb said fiercely. If he tried, Arya would stab him and Sansa would cry and Jon would sulk for a year. "I do not sulk," Jon said, wounded. "You brood," Robb corrected cheerfully. "It's worse." Their laughter softened some of the tightness in her chest. But later, when the feast had broken apart into smaller conversations and shadows, Daena caught Catelyn speaking softly with Lady Mormont, their heads bent together. The word betrothal floated over the roar of the hall, drifted to her ears like a snowflake. She told herself it was only talk. Ladies spoke of such things the way men spoke of skirmishes and harvests. But that night she lay awake long after Arya's breathing had evened beside her, staring at the rafters. If they sent her away, would the dreams follow? Would the fire in her blood burn just as hot beneath another roof, under another sky? Or would Winterfell keep a piece of her, the way the weirwood seemed to have taken her secrets into its carved, bleeding face? The wall along the outer keep was one of Daena's favorite places in all Winterfell. From up there, the world seemed to stretch forever, a patchwork of dark woods and pale fields fading into blue-gray distance. To the south lay the Kingsroad, a faint line through the snow. To the north, the land rose and fell in bleak waves until it vanished into cloud. If she squinted, she could almost imagine seeing the wall itself, a pale streak on the horizon, where the world ended and something older began. "You'll fall," Jon said as she swung her legs idly, heels tapping the stone. "You taught me how to do that safely, remember?" she said, but she scooted back a little all the same. The drop to the yard below was not a killing fall, but it would break bones enough. He snorted. That was off tree roots, not castle walls. She turned to study him in the sinking light. Snow clung to his curls. His cheeks were raw from the cold. He looked older of late, the soft edges of childhood hardening into sharper lines. There was a restlessness in him, a tension, as if he were always half caught between staying and running. "You're thinking of the wall again," she said. He shrugged, though his gaze stayed fixed on the north. "It's a place I could belong," he said after a moment. "No bastards there, no trueborn either, only brothers. Oh, And cold, she said. I've heard it's colder than here. That's hardly possible, he said, eyebrow raised. You've never heard old men talk about ice spiders bigger than hounds? She asked, grinning. Or dead men walking. She says the wall is the only thing keeping them out. She says a great many things, Jon said, though he shivered, and not entirely from the wind. Most of them to frighten us into finishing our porridge. Maybe, Daena said. She looked north, two eyes narrowed. Sometimes I dream of it, she admitted. A great wall of blue-white stone, and wind like knives, and something on the other side that wants to come in. He glanced at her, startled. You dream of the wall? And of other things, she said, tracing a crack in the stone between them with her glove. You were right. I am too old and too clever by half. He exhaled, a white puff. You asked Father again, didn't you? About before. She nodded. He will not answer. He says I am his, and that is enough. That's more than he says of me, Jon said wryly. I asked once when I was small. He looked at me as if I'd stuck a knife in him, and said never again. I'm sorry, she said. Don't be. He shrugged, the movement small. It doesn't matter. I know who raised me, who taught me, who stood between me and Cersei's temper when she came here once. All jewels and sneers. She smiled at the memory. The queen had smelled of oranges and spite. She called you, that boy, like you were a stain on the tablecloth. I was a stain on the tablecloth, he said. Sansa nearly knocked over a flagon trying to curtsy at her. Sansa nearly fainted when she saw her gown, Daena corrected. I thought Arya would climb under the table just to see if her shoes were made of gold. They laughed softly. The memory warmed the space between them. What if there's more? She asked after a moment. To us, than what we've been told. To you. To me. Jon's mouth twisted. You mean, what if we're secret princes and princesses? He said, half mocking. You've been listening to too many of Sansa's songs. I've been listening to Maester's books, she said. When I see pictures of dragon lords, they look like me. When I hear songs of the rebellion, they speak of a little girl smuggled away somewhere across the narrow sea. The last. It makes me want to tear the pages out and burn them. His eyes sharpened. And if you were? He asked quietly. If you were one of them? She looked down at her hands, pale against the dark stone. Then Robert Baratheon would want me dead, she said, just as quietly. And Father would have lied to his king for my sake. For years. The wind stole their words, tattering them into the dusk. Whatever blood you have, Jon said at last. You're my sister. That's what matters. I'm not, she said, half a protest, half a plea. You are, he insisted. Maybe not by law, by something else. We both know what it is to be ghosts at our own table. She thought of that. Two shadows in gray, standing just outside the circle of the firelight. A bastard and a girl with the wrong hair. Ghosts, she echoed, and smiled without quite meaning to. Then perhaps we haunt Winterfell together. He bumped his shoulder against hers. Perhaps we do. The bells rang faintly from the courtyard then, calling them to some chore or lesson they had half forgotten. They climbed down the inside stair, their fingers chilled on the stone. Daena took one last look at the north before the wall cut it from sight, feeling a tug in her chest as if some invisible thread ran from her heart to that unseen line of ice. Uncle Benjen's visits were rare, and all the more precious for it. He rode in one pale morning with half a dozen rangers at his back, the black of their cloaks stark against the snow. The yard erupted at once. Stable boys running, guards calling greetings, Arya shouting "Uncle!" at the top of her lungs as she barreled into him. He swept her up laughing, his breath steaming, his cheeks raw from northern winds. Daena hung back at first, watching the easy way he moved among them. There was something of Lord Stark in him, the same gray eyes and quiet, steady presence, but Benjen's smiles came quicker, his jests sharper. Only when he clapped Jon on the shoulder did she see the tension there, the way Jon's spine straightened as if under a weight. Still thinking of the wall? Benjen said, as if resuming a conversation that had never truly ended. Sometimes, Jon admitted. You'd make a fine ranger, Benjen said, if you learned to swing an axe and not just your sword. The trees beyond the wall don't fall to pretty steel. And the dead, Arya piped up from where she'd wrapped herself around his leg. Old Nan says there are dead men up there who walk, and giants. And Old Nan says the moon is made of snow. Benjen cut in, but his gaze flicked, just for a heartbeat, to the north. There are things in the woods best left alone. That's why we're there, so you lot can sleep easy. Daena stepped forward then, emboldened by the warmth in his eyes when he looked at her. And what of girls? She asked. Would I make a fine ranger? He laughed, a surprised bark. Gods, you're your father's, all right? He said, shaking his head. Ask too many questions by half. His amusement softened. The watch is no place for you, little wolf. I'm not a wolf, she said, though there was no heat in it. I'm something else. His gaze lingered, searching her face for some echo of a past he'd rather forget. Of a king who had burned men alive while Benjen was still a boy. Of rumors of babes dashed against walls, silver hair matted with blood. You're stark enough for me, he said gruffly. Whatever color your hair. Later, when the rangers had eaten and drunk and swapped tales in the hall, he found her again in the yard, watching the men check girths and cinches. The air was sharp in her lungs, the sky a hard, pale gray. I hear you've grown fond of the wall in your dreams, he said softly. She started. Jon talks too much. Jon talks just enough. Benjen glanced at the gatehouse, where the black banner of the Night's Watch drooped in the still air. That country up there, it's not like this. He gestured at the walls, the warmth of the castle. Winterfell has hot springs under its bones. The wall has only cold, and old things. If you dream of it, child, be careful which way the dreams pull you. She studied him. Is it true? She asked. What Old Nan says, that there were white shadows once? That men fought them in the long night? He hesitated. I've seen things in the woods, he said, voice low. Dead things that should not walk. I've seen tracks in the snow where nothing living could have left them. But if you ask your maester, he'll tell you they are stories for the hearth. Safer that way. Safer for who? She asked. He smiled crookedly. You'll drive men mad with questions when you're grown. Perhaps I already do, she said lightly, though the talk of dead things made her skin crawl. Before he rode out the next morning, she watched from the steps as Eddard Stark clasped his brother's arm in farewell. The words they shared were too low for her to catch, but she saw the tightness of Ned's mouth, the way Benjen's gaze slid toward her for the briefest instant. When the gate closed behind the rangers, Jon stood a long time staring at it, his hand resting on the pommel of his sword as if it were an anchor. You'll go someday, Daena said quietly, coming to stand beside him. Won't you? He didn't look at her. There's nothing for me here, he said. There's us, she said. There's me. He flinched just a little. That's not the same. No, she thought it wasn't. Love did not change the letters on a name or erase the way bastards were spoken of in the hall. It did not burn away whatever secret lay coiled in her own blood, waiting for a spark. The wind tugged at her braid, lifting silver strands from their plate. She thought of the wall, of dead things in the snow, and wondered if whatever watched from beyond it would know her if it saw her, if it would call her by a name she'd heard only in dreams. The dragon eggs came to Winterfell in a battered oak chest that smelled of sea salt and foreign spices. They arrived with a trader from White Harbor, a lean man with salt in his beard and too many rings on his fingers. He claimed they had been found on a Lysine galley wrecked off Skagos, taken as prize and passed from hand to hand until they were more legend than wares. By the time he set them before Eddard Stark in the hall, he spoke of them with half-belief himself. Petrified, my lord, he said, flipping back the lid with a flourish. No more danger than any river rock. But the lords in the south, they like their curiosities. Makes them feel closer to the old days, to hold a bit of Valyria in their hands. The hall murmured as men leaned forward to see. Daena, standing behind Catelyn's chair, felt something in her chest stutter. 3 shapes nestled in straw, each the size of a large man's fist. One was a deep, mottled green, shot through with veins of bronze. Another was pale as bone, with faint swirls of gold. The third was a rich, dark red, like coals banked under ash. "Where would a Lysene galley get such things?" Ned asked. His voice was even, but Daena, who had learned his moods like weather, heard the undercurrent. "Who can say?" the traitor said. "There's always been tales, my lord, of lost clutches, of eggs traded in secret after the dragons died. They're pretty enough, if nothing else." Daena's hand went to her own throat, feeling the quick beat there. "Pretty baubles," Great Jon Umber scoffed, though his eyes were bright. "Useless if you can't hatch him." "And thank the gods for that," Roderick Castle muttered under his breath. "Last thing we need is some fool with notions and a dragon in his yard." Ned's gaze flicked, almost imperceptibly, toward his silver-haired ward. It was so brief that only Catelyn, sitting stiff beside him, and perhaps one other, would have seen. "We are not in the habit of buying trinkets," he said, and closed the chest. "Winterfell's gold is for grain and steel, not for Southerners' stories." The traitor bowed and made the proper noises of disappointment, but Daena saw calculation in his eyes. He would sell them elsewhere, to a Manderly perhaps who liked fine things, or to some hedge knight with more coin than sense. That night she could not sleep. The dreams came hotter than ever. Wings beating, fire pouring from a great maw, a city screaming below. She saw herself not as a girl in gray but as something larger, as if she rode on the neck of a beast that cast shadows over palaces. When she woke, sweat dampened her hair despite the chill. The sound of her own breathing seemed too loud. She found herself at Maester Luwin's door before she had decided to move. The corridor was dark save for a single candle by the Maester's chamber. He opened the door at her knock, robe thrown over his nightshirt. "Child?" he asked, surprised. "Is something amiss?" "The eggs?" she blurted, before fear could seal her mouth. "Where did the traitor take them?" He blinked. "Home, I should think, unless he means to try his luck further south." "Why?" She pushed past him into the room, palms slick. "Were they real?" He sighed. "Real enough as stones go. Whether they ever held life is another question." "Could they hatch?" she asked. "If someone... Forgive me, it's foolish, but if the stories are true, that dragons come from fire, from..." "Daena." His voice cut across her words, sharper than she'd heard it. "Whatever nonsense you've heard, let it go. Dragons are gone. Have been for more than a century. Men who chased their ghosts burned themselves to ash." She swallowed. "But what if they weren't nonsense?" He looked at her with something like pity. "You are not a dragon," he said softly. "You are a girl of the north, with frost on your lashes and mud on your boots like any other. The world is better for that." Her laugh came out brittle. "You mean safer. I mean kinder," he said. "The dragons brought more than awe. They brought fire to fields and shadows over cities. The last of that line left this realm in blood and madness. We have peace under Robert Baratheon now. As much peace as men ever allow." "Peace," she repeated, thinking of songs about a little girl smuggled away across the sea while her brothers were butchered. "For some." Luwin's shoulders drooped. "Is this about the book you opened?" he asked, gentler now. "The page with the little princess drawing?" Her throat tightened. "She looked like me. She looked like a child," he corrected. "They all did once. Even kings. Even madmen." He moved to a shelf and drew out a different tome, one bound in plain leather. "There are other stories worth your thoughts," he said. "Of Bran the Builder of the Children of the Forest. Magic older than dragonfire. If you must fill your head with wonders, fill it with those." She took the book because it seemed expected, its weight solid in her hands. But as she left, she glanced at the raven perched on its stand by the window. His black eyes watched her, unblinking. For a moment, in the candle's guttering light, they looked almost violet. That night she dreamed not of cities burning, but of 3 stones lying in a bed of straw. She reached for them, and they were warm. The raven bearing the king's seal arrived on a morning so still the smoke from the chimneys rose straight into a sky the color of old steel. Daena was in the yard, helping Arya undo a tangle in her bowstring, when she heard the cry from the rookery tower. It was different from the usual caws and croaks, a clear, sharp call that cut through the chatter of men and the thud of practiced swords. Her head snapped up. On the platform above, a dark shape wheeled, then vanished into the open window. "Race you," Arya said, eyes gleaming. They ran, through corridors, up the winding steps, their boots striking sparks from the stone. Daena's heart hammered against her ribs, not only from the climb. The dreams of late had left her with a constant sense of waiting, as if something vast moved just beyond sight. Maester Luwin was already at the window when they burst into the rookery, breathless. The raven in question perched on a high ledge, sleek and black, pinning him with a beady eye as he reached for the ribbon around its leg. "Back, you two," he said, though his tone was distracted. "Mind the others. They'll peck if you crowd them." Eddard Stark stood by the central table, the hood of his cloak pushed back, his hair damp from the morning frost. He took the scroll when Luwin offered it, his mouth tightening at the sight of the wax. A crowned stag impressed deep and red. Daena meant to obey the maester, to watch from a respectful distance, but her feet carried her a step closer, then another. Arya tugged at her sleeve and whispered, "Maybe the king is dead. Then Robb will have to go south and claim the throne. Or Joffrey, or someone." "Don't be foolish," Daena murmured, though her own mind leaped to similar wild places. Ned broke the seal with his thumb, unrolled the parchment, and read. As his eyes moved, his brow furrowed. A muscle worked in his jaw. "What is it, my lord?" Luwin asked. "News from the south," Ned said slowly. "Old news, and an invitation that comes on the heels of it." His gaze flicked to the girls. "Best you two go down. Your mother will want your help." Arya opened her mouth to protest. Daena placed a hand on her arm. "Come," she said lightly. "If it is anything worth hearing, we'll hear it once the hall starts buzzing." Grumbling, Arya allowed herself to be steered away. Daena paused at the doorway, though, casting one last glance back. Her lord father stood very still, the parchment hanging limp between his fingers, as if the words on it weighed as much as iron. The hall did buzz soon enough. That afternoon, word ran through Winterfell like wildfire through dry brush. Jon Arryn, the king's hand, was dead, and King Robert himself meant to ride north with his queen and court, to visit his old friend and name a new hand. "Imagine it," Sansa breathed, eyes wide as she and Daena sewed by the window in the girls' solar. Beyond the glass, men were already checking the walls, seeing to gates and banners, as if the king might arrive that very night. A whole royal court here, lords and ladies and knights, the queen, Princess Myrcella, Prince Joffrey, and twice as many boots tracking mud into the halls, Septa Mordain said tartly. "Do not let your heads be turned by golden thread and jewels, girls. A king's visit is duty before it is delight." Arya muttered something about swords being delight enough. Daena said nothing. Her fingers moved on their own, pulling the needle through cloth, but her thoughts skittered like startled fish. Robert Baratheon, the usurper, the man whose hammer had shattered the dragon prince's chest, whose banners had stormed the capital, who had sat his men on the Targaryen throne while children bled. She knew these things only from books and whispers. To the north, he was more often spoken of as the friend of their lord, the man who had stood with Ned Stark when all the world burned. Yet when she pictured him, she saw only a shadow at the end of her dreams of fire. "Do you think he'll notice me?" Sansa asked and flushed. "Not the king," she amended quickly. "The prince. You're hard to miss when you're sighing at him from across the hall," Arya said. Daena pricked her finger and did not feel it. "The king won't notice me," she said, more to herself than them. I'm no one. That night, in the privacy of his study, Ned Stark poured wine he barely touched and spoke low with Catelyn. He means to drag me south, he said, staring into the hearth. To make me hand. Robert never could see past his own wants. It is an honor, Catelyn said, though her tone was cautious. A great one. It is a noose. He rubbed at his eyes. The court is a pit of snakes. And his voice roughened. If he sees her, if anyone whispers, if one man who was in King's Landing in those days looks closely enough. She is a girl of the north, Catelyn said, but anxiety sharpened her words. She wears gray, not red. No one will think. Some will, he said. Some already do. Luwin has had to quell talk more than once. Men remember more than we'd like. A slip of a girl on her father's hip, hair like spun silver, watching from a balcony as he burned men in his hall. Catelyn shivered. What will you do? He looked up, and in his eyes she saw the boy who had ridden to war with her betrothed, and the man who had returned with another woman's son at his heels and a story on his lips. What I have always done, he said. Try to keep those I can alive. Try not to damn myself in the process. She thought of Daena then, of the way the girl watched the world with an intensity that seemed too large for her frame. And if the king asks questions? Then I will lie, Ned Stark said quietly, and the words tasted like ash, as I have lied for 14 years. He found her in the godswood that evening, as he so often did when the weight of the castle grew too much. She sat with her back to the heart tree, knees drawn up, cloak spread around her like a pool of gray. The red leaves above whispered in a wind too faint to feel, their shadows dappling her face. In the fading light, her hair seemed almost white. Daena, he said. She looked up, startled, then scrambled to her feet, brushing snow from her skirts. My lord, she corrected herself hastily. I heard. Everyone is saying the king is coming. They are not wrong, he said. His mind is set. He means to drag half his court with him, eat my larders bare, and leave a trail of bastards on every farm between here and the neck. Her lips quirked despite herself. From the songs, one would think that's a king's chief duty. From the songs, one would think dragons are a good idea, he said dryly. Both are lies. She sobered. Will you go with him? He hesitated. I have not yet answered, he said, but you know Robert. He hears no word but yes when he wants something. You don't want to go, she observed. No, he said, I do not. The South is not for me. Nor for me, she said too quickly. Her hand went to the carved face at her back, fingers fitting into the grooves left by generations of knives. If he is your friend, will he not understand? Robert understands war and wine, he said. He does not understand quiet lives. Silence settled between them for a moment, full of unsaid things. Then Daena drew in a breath. If he comes, she said, will he know me? He swallowed. You are a girl of the north, he said, repeating the words as if they were a prayer. You wear my colors. You bear my name. That is not what I asked. No, he admitted. He looked at her then, really looked, at the stark line of her jaw so like faces he had seen lined up in death, at the violet of her eyes, a color that had once meant power and now meant risk. You were very small when I first saw you, he said quietly. Your hair was shorter, your cheeks rounder. You cried until you lost your voice. Images rose, unbidden, of a room that smelled of blood and smoke, of a woman's body cooling in a bed, of another child wailing as a city burned outside. I took you from a house that was not yet finished bleeding. Her mouth parted. King's Landing, she whispered. Yes, he said, from King's Landing, from men with Lannister lions on their chests and Baratheon stags on their banners, eager to prove their loyalty by killing babes. My father, she said. He was Aerys, he said, the second of his name, called the Mad King. He burned my father and brother alive. He watched the words strike her like blows. He was your father. She pressed her palm harder against the tree, as if she could steady herself on its ancient heart. And my mother? Queen Riella died birthing you on Dragonstone, he said. So we heard. But by the time I reached King's Landing, there was another child there. Viserys, a boy with your hair and your eyes, screaming that you would come back to him. She closed her eyes briefly, as if the name hurt. Viserys. Varys told me, Ned went on. He said the boy and his infant sister would be smuggled away across the narrow sea. That Robert's wrath would not stop at the city walls. I believed him. I wanted to. He looked at his gloved hands. Until one night, after the fighting was done, they brought a woman to me. One of the king's women, they said. She had kept his madness at bay, as much as anyone could. She had a baby in her arms. Your baby. Daenerys's breath came sharp. Not across the sea, she said. Here. Varys feared the ships would be watched, he said. He feared Robert's men would hunt every babe with pale hair from here to Braavos. He asked me to take you, to hide you. He said a girl in the north would vanish like snow in snow. His mouth twisted. He was not wrong. And you did, she said. I remembered the Targaryen children brought out wrapped in crimson cloaks, he said, voice low. I remembered their heads on spears. I could not. He broke off, jaw tight. I told Robert they were all dead, that none remained. It was not the first lie between us, but it was the worst. A long silence fell. The sounds of Winterfell seemed distant here. The clang of a hammer, the shout of a distant guard. Even the wind held its breath. So I am her, Daenerys said at last. Using the name felt like stepping into a river in full flood. I am Daenerys, not Daena. Yes, he said. You are. She laughed once, a short, incredulous sound. And the king who comes, she said, half to herself, is the man who killed my brother and my father, who sat on their throne, who would kill me too if he knew. He would want to, Ned said. There would be others who would counsel mercy, or politics, but Robert, he shook his head. He has never forgiven the Targaryens for his wounds, or for Lyanna. The name hung there, another ghost. And yet, Daenerys said slowly, tasting the unfamiliar weight of it, I have lived here, in his peace, under his banners. I have laughed at his songs. I have worn his sigil on my cloak. You have lived under my protection, Ned said. She looked up at him, eyes bright with something that might have been anger or grief or both. And now, he said, you must be more careful than ever. The court brings eyes, tongues, men who were there. One glance, one word in the wrong ear, and all I have done to keep you breathing will come to nothing. And what would you have me do? She asked softly. Hide in the crypts? Cover my head with a sack? Wear your hood, he said. Tie your hair back. Stay from the king's sight when you can. Let them see a quiet northern girl. Her hands clenched at her sides. I am not quiet, she said, and I am not only northern. You are my daughter, he repeated. Whatever else you are, I would keep you that way. She searched his face. Whatever fury had sparked in her cooled, leaving something rawer. I don't know who I am, she said. A dragon's daughter, a wolf's ward, a lie told to a king. If Robert Baratheon comes here and sees me, perhaps he'll answer better than any book. He will answer with steel, Ned said, not words. She looked at the heart tree, at its red tears. Then perhaps it is time dragons learn to live without thrones, she murmured, and without being seen. He reached for her then, awkwardly, as if he did not know how to bridge the distance between confession and comfort. She let him pull her into an embrace, her cheek pressed against the rough fur of his cloak. He smelled of smoke and cold and something steady that had nothing to do with crowns. When they parted, the light had almost gone from the sky. Winterfell's torches flared to life one by one, like a chain of small suns. In the distance, somewhere far to the south, A king rode north with thoughts of old friends and old glories. In the godswood, beneath the bleeding eyes of the heart tree, a girl with silver hair and a borrowed name stood very still, feeling the world tilt beneath her feet. The day the king arrived, Winterfell held its breath. Dawn came pale and slow, the sky low and bruise-colored, promising more snow. Men were up before first light, shoveling drifts from the yard, polishing mail, checking the hinges of the great gate. The cooks cursed and sweated in their hot kitchens. The hounds barked themselves hoarse at the unusual stir. The castle felt like a giant roused from sleep, joints creaking, heart pounding. Daenerys stood with the rest of the household on the steps before the gate, wrapped in a thick gray cloak lined with fur. Her hood was pulled well forward, casting her face in shadow. She could feel the weight of her hair beneath it, heavy braids pinned and coiled at the nape of her neck. Catelyn Stark's hands had done that, fingers steady even as their eyes had met in the looking glass. "Whatever you were before," the Lady of Winterfell had said, voice low and tight. "You are my husband's ward now. Let them see that first." It was not quite acceptance, but neither was it rejection. It was perhaps the best Daenerys could hope for with a queen on the road. Now, on the steps, she stood between Sansa and Jon. Sansa vibrated with contained excitement, her gloved hands clasped just so, her hair elaborately done beneath her own hood. Arya bounced on the balls of her feet, tugging at her cloak, more impatient than awed. Robb stood a little ahead of them, shoulders squared, the wind tugging at his auburn hair where he had refused a hood. "They're coming?" Arya whispered, sharp-eyed as ever. Daenerys followed her gaze. Far down the Kingsroad, where it cut through the snow-draped trees, a dark line moved against the white. At first it was only the suggestion of motion, then the glitter of metal, then the shape of men and horses. The banners came into focus. The crowned stag of Baratheon on black and gold, the lion of Lannister roaring crimson and gold beside it. Her heart thudded once, hard. King Robert Baratheon. She had seen his face in drawings. A younger man then, broad-shouldered and black-bearded, warhammer in hand. The man who had shattered her brother's chest on the Trident, who had hunted her family's last heirs beyond the narrow sea. The man whose name she had cursed in dreams she could not confess. Now he rode toward her father's gate, older, thicker about the middle, his armor straining over his belly, his beard streaked with gray. He laughed as he came, the sound carrying even over the groan of wagon wheels and the clatter of hooves. The crown on his head caught what little light the sky offered. Beside him, in a litter draped in heavy curtains, rode the queen. "Remember," Eddard Stark said under his breath, "for his children's ears alone. Bow low, speak when spoken to. And you?" His glance flicked to Daenerys, so quick she might have imagined it. "Keep your hood up." The gates creaked open. The columns spilled into the yard, steam rising from the horses' flanks. Guards in stag-emblazoned cloaks spread out, forming a wary ring along the walls. Winterfell's men watched them with matching caution. Steel recognized steel. The king swung down from his horse heavily, landing with a grunt. He tore off his helmet and shook his hair free, grinning. "Ned," he bellowed. "Nine hells, but it's cold. How do you stand it?" Lord Stark descended the steps and bowed, formal for one heartbeat. Then Robert seized him in a crushing embrace, lifting him off his feet like a child. The yard laughed, some with genuine amusement, some from nerves. Daenerys watched, breath shallow. This was the man whose face she had burned in effigy 1,000 times in her thoughts, and he looked tired, wind-reddened, human. There was a scar along his jaw she did not remember from the drawings. "You've gotten fat," Ned said when Robert set him down, a ghost of a smile on his lips. "You've gotten old," Robert shot back, "but you're still ugly as a mule." Laughter rippled again. For a moment, the years and the blood between them seemed a story someone else had told. Then the queen's litter opened. Cersei Lannister stepped down like a cat slipping from a high branch, every movement graceful, controlled. Her hair was spun gold beneath a circlet. her gown a fall of deep green that made her eyes seem all the sharper. Behind her, the royal children emerged. Joffrey, golden and smirking. Myrcella, all soft smiles. Tommen, chubby-cheeked and blinking in the cold. Daenerys lowered her gaze. She did not trust herself to look Cersei Lannister in the eye. It was Lannister men who had finished what Robert began, who had dashed babies against walls to prove their loyalty to a new crown. Men like Jaime Lannister, who rode behind the queen now, his white cloak immaculate, his golden hair shining despite the dull light. "Your Grace," Ned said, bowing again. "Winterfell is yours, your majesties," Catelyn echoed, bending her knee, her children following suit. Daenerys bent with them, the move well practiced. Her hood shadowed her face. The rough stone of the steps pressed cold against her knees. She could feel the king's gaze sweep over them, heavy as a hand. "So these are the famous Stark pups," Robert said. "How many are there now? 7? 8? He laughed as if at a private joke. "You Northerners breed like weasels." He moved past them, clapping Robb on the shoulder, chucking Arya under the chin when she scowled. His eyes slid over Daenerys, paused for the barest fraction of a heartbeat on the pale line of her exposed throat, then went on. If he noticed the glimpse of silver at her temple where a strand had escaped, his face did not show it. "Come," he said, slinging an arm around Ned's shoulders. "Wheel to your hall and your wine. I've ridden too long on piss and salted beef." The column began to move again, heading toward the inner keep. Sansa exhaled beside Daenerys, a sound somewhere between relief and disappointment. Arya made a face at Joffrey's retreating back. "Only Jon see me, less dazzled than ever." His mouth was a thin line. His dark eyes followed the royal party with a look Daenerys could not quite read. Resentment, perhaps, or a longing for something he knew he would never touch. She touched his gloved hand, briefly, a reassurance and a question both. He glanced at her, and in that single look she saw her own turmoil reflected back. Fear, curiosity, a strange, bitter thrill. The king had come, and he had not seen her, not yet. Winterfell's great hall had seen many feasts, but none so strange as the one that night. The high table groaned under the weight of roasted boar, venison, trout fresh from the streams, loaves of dark bread, wheels of cheese. Barrels of ale and casks of strong red wine had been hauled up from the cellars. The air was thick with smoke and the smell of meat and men. At the center, King Robert held court with flagon in hand, already ruddy-cheeked from drink. He roared with laughter at some jest from great Jon Umber, slapped Renly Baratheon's back hard enough to jostle his cup, shouted for more music. Beside him, Cersei Lannister smiled with only the lower half of her face, her eyes cool, calculating, taking the measure of each northern lord who approached to offer obeisance. Eddard Stark sat a little to the king's right, posture straight, cup mostly untouched. He said the right words at the right times, but his gaze wandered often. To his children, to Catelyn, to Daenerys. She sat lower on the dais between Sansa and Jon, as was her custom. Her hood was gone. It would have been insult here, but her hair had been tightly braided and bound, woven with a gray ribbon that muted the pale shine. In the melee of light and shadow, among so many faces and colors, perhaps the difference might be lost. She could feel eyes on her nonetheless. Men noticed oddities wherever they went. "She looks like a snow maid from the tales," a lord from the Rills said in a voice he doubtless thought discreet. "Look at that hair. Southron mother, they say," another replied. "Some bastard cousin of the Tullis. Or so I've heard." "Tullis don't look like that," the first said, then shrugged. "Pretty is pretty." Daenerys kept her gaze on her trencher, though the words sank into her skin like sleet. Sansa, to her left, chattered about the queen's gown, the braid pattern of Princess Myrcella's hair, the way Prince Joffrey's armor had shone in the yard. Arya had already deserted her place and squirmed down to where the squires were, earning dark looks from Septa Mordane. "Will you ever see so many knights again?" Sansa sighed, more to herself than to Daenerys. "It's just like in the songs. It's just like in the songs." Daenerys echoed, but she was listening to a different melody. The rise and fall of voices at the high table. "And we'll have you in King's Landing," Robert was saying, voice carrying over the music. "I'll not hear no, Ned. The realm needs you. I need you. The North needs me," Ned replied. "Winterfell. Winterfell will stand with or without you," Robert cut in. "7 hells, man, you've built it strong enough. But look at me." His voice dipped then, too low for Daenerys to catch, but she saw the change in his face, the way the merriment dimmed. "He looks tired," she thought again, and then savagely good. As if sensing her gaze, his eyes swept the hall. For a heartbeat, they brushed her, lingering a fraction of a second longer than they had in the yard. Her fork stilled. There was no recognition there, not the kind she had feared. Instead, his gaze passed over her with the same brief interest he gave any pretty girl on the dais. She realized, with a jolt, that she had expected more. That some foolish part of her had believed he would feel her like a prickle on his skin. That his hatred of her blood would tug his eyes to her like a magnet. To him, she was only another face. "Who is that?" A voice drawled behind her. "The little silver bird on the Stark perch." Daenerys turned slightly to find Jaime Lannister standing just behind the high table, his white cloak gleaming in the firelight. He held a cup loosely, as if the wine were an afterthought. His green eyes were amused, curious. Catelyn answered before Daenerys could. "My lord husband's ward," she said smoothly. "Daena Snow, a child of the war." "A bastard, then," Jaime said. His gaze drifted unabashedly over Daenerys's hair, her eyes. "Interesting. Not your concern, sire," Catelyn said, the steel under her courtesy unmistakable. "Oh, nothing is my concern," Jaime said, his smile lazy and poisonous. "I only stand and look pretty. That's what the white cloak is for." His eyes met Daenerys's then, and the curve of his mouth sharpened. "You have your father's eyes." The hall blurred around her for a second. There were too many fathers in that sentence. "Lord Stark has gray eyes," she said evenly. "So he does," Jaime agreed, unconcerned. "I was thinking of another man. Long dead." He took a sip of wine. "You were not in King's Landing when I last saw hair like that. But then, the city was more crowded than usual. What with all the bodies." "Sir Jaime," Catelyn said sharply. He laughed and stepped away, cloak whispering against the stone. "No offense meant, my lady. Enjoy the feast." He melted back into the crowd of courtiers, leaving cold in his wake. Daenerys sat very still, her pulse beating in her throat. Sansa prattled on about the queen's jewels. Jon's hand closed around his knife hilt, knuckles white. Ned's gaze found them again, sharp as a drawn blade. The music swelled. Men laughed, drank, some already swaying in their seats. The feast went on as if nothing had changed. But Daenerys knew, with a clarity as bright and bitter as winter air, that someone had seen her, not as a northern snowmaid, but as a ghost from a hall of burning men. She escaped the feast as soon as courtesy allowed. The music had grown louder, the air thicker with wine and sweat and smoke. Robert's laughter boomed again and again, fraying at the edges into something raw. Men began to sing bawdy songs. Someone upended a table in the corner to cheers. The queen's smile had calcified into something brittle. Daenerys slipped from her bench while the hall was distracted by a troop of tumblers. She moved down the side aisle, keeping her head low. The guards at the doors barely glanced at her, just another young woman in gray, retreating from the king's revels. The moment the heavy doors closed behind her, the noise cut off, muffled to a distant roar. The corridor beyond was cool and quiet. Torches burned at intervals, their flames casting wavering shadows on the stone. Her footsteps sounded too loud. Her breathing seemed to echo. She walked without direction at first, letting muscle memory carry her along familiar paths. Past the small sept, where a solitary candle flickered before the mother's carved face. Past the armory, where the tang of oil and steel seeped under the door. past the stair that led up to the family's chambers. Only when she reached a small, seldom-used alcove where an arrow slit let in a thin shard of moonlight did she stop. She pressed her back to the wall and slid down until she was sitting, knees drawn up. Her hands shook. She wrapped them around herself, fingers knotting in the fabric of her dress. "You have your father's eyes." Sir Jaime Lannister had said it lightly, as a barb and amusement, but he had been there, in the hall where Aerys Targaryen raved and burned men, in the throne room where Robert Baratheon had stood over her brother's broken body, in the city where her name had meant everything and nothing. If he looked too closely, if he thought too long, her stomach twisted. Footsteps approached, soft but assured. For a moment she imagined Lannister white, black Baratheon, gold thread on crimson. She forced herself not to flinch as the shadows lengthened. Dany! It was Jon. He came into the slice of moonlight, his face pale and drawn. His hair was a dark tangle around his face. He had unfastened his cloak, as if the heat of the hall still clung to him, though the corridor was cold. "Are you all right?" he asked. She let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. "Do I look all right?" "You look like you're trying very hard not to be afraid," he said. "And I've seen you afraid only twice. Once when Robb took an arrow to the arm. Once when Bran fell. So." She huffed a laugh that wasn't quite a laugh. "I'm not afraid," she lied. "I am aware." He slid down the wall to sit beside her, shoulders almost touching. The arrow slit painted a stripe of light across his cheek. "Of what?" he asked. "Of men who've killed my blood," she said quietly. The words should have felt like betrayal, spoken in his house's halls, but they did not. They felt like truth. Of kings who sit on stolen thrones, of queens with lion's eyes, of knights who remember the color of my father's hair. Jon was silent for a heartbeat. "Jaime Lannister," he said, "not a question." "He knows," she whispered. "Or he guesses." He said he spoke of King's Landing, of bodies. He looked at me like I was a ghost. "You are no ghost," Jon said. "You're flesh and breath and stubbornness enough to drive Maester Luwin mad." "If he tells the queen," she pressed. "If he tells the king, father will handle it," Jon said. He's kept you safe this long. By lying," she said. "By hanging a sword over all our heads. If it falls now, it will cut more than me." He rubbed a hand over his face. "He never should have brought you here," he said, and then flinched at his own words. "I mean, no." She looked at him. "You're right. He should have put me on a ship, sent me east, left me to the mercy of men in another land." Jon turned to her, expression fierce. "You think that would be better? Alone among strangers? With nothing but a name that makes men want to kill you for the sake of some dead prince?" "It might have been simpler," she said. "No wolves, no weirwoods, no you." The last word came out softer than she meant. He heard it anyway. His gaze flicked to her mouth, then away, as if burned. "I don't know what will happen," he said roughly. "If you stay, if you go. I know that Robert will leave in a few days with half his court. I know father will go with him, and I know that wherever you are, there will be danger. Because of who you are, because of what men make of names. We are little people in their games," she said, remembering something old Nan had muttered once about kings and dragons and the folk crushed between their claws. "Maybe," Jon said. He stared at his hands. "But sometimes, little people have teeth." She smiled, despite herself. "Spoken like a wolf," he nudged her shoulder with his. "Spoken like someone who's watched you bloody Theon's nose." They sat for a while in the thin strip of moonlight, saying nothing. The hall's noise was a distant hum, like the sea in a shell. Somewhere outside, beyond walls and woods and miles, the world shifted under the weight of a king's decisions. "We can run, you know," Jon said suddenly. She blinked. "Run. North," he said. "Before the king leaves. Before father gives his answer. We could slip out by the hunter's gate. Take 2 good horses. Be halfway to Castle Black before anyone noticed. And then? She asked, half amused, half horrified. Join the Night's Watch? They couldn't send you back, he said. It's an oath, sacred. I shall take no wife, hold no lands. I shall wear no crown, she finished. So we would be ghosts there instead. You in black, me in gray. He flushed. It was a foolish thought. No, she said. It was kind, but I will not run, Jon. Not from him. She did not say whether she meant the king or the father she had never known. Perhaps both. If my being here puts you in danger, I will go where father bids. But I will not vanish like smoke. Not again. He looked at her for a long moment, something like pride threading through the worry in his eyes. Then I'll stand with you, he said, wherever that is. The promise hung there, impossible and fragile and real, in the cold corridor of a castle older than both their names. The crypts of Winterfell were colder than the yard, colder than the battlements. Down there, beneath the earth, the air felt older, faintly damp, smelling of stone and dust and something like the memory of snow. Daenerys had not meant to follow them. She had been on her way back from the godswood, cloak pulled tight, when she saw the king and Eddard Stark disappear into the stair that led down. 2 guards took up positions at the top, but they paid her no mind when she passed a little later, head bowed, hands full of nothing but her own nerve. She had walked these stairs since she was small. To them, she was a shadow where she belonged. Her boots made almost no sound on the stone as she descended. The torches on the walls spat and hissed, throwing orange light across the faces of long-dead Starks, warriors with stone swords in their laps, women with direwolves at their feet. She passed Brandon and Ricard, and the rage that had burned her at their story mingled oddly with the fear knotting her belly. Her father had burned them. The king below had avenged them. Neither had spared a thought for the baby girl born in another castle, under another sky. She heard their voices before she saw them. You see her every time you close your eyes, Robert was saying. His voice sounded thick, not with wine now but with something heavier. I know. God's Ned, I know. Lyanna. Daenerys edged closer, pressing herself into the shadow of a pillar. Beyond, in a pool of torchlight, stood the statue of Lyanna Stark. A young woman carved in stone, slender, with long hair and a wreath of winter roses in her lap. Eddard Stark stood before her, jaw clenched. Robert Baratheon loomed beside him, broader, older, a giant felled slowly by years instead of steel. She was supposed to be my queen, Robert said. He seemed smaller down here, his bluster muffled by the dead. All this, all the rest of it, was never meant to be. Not Cersei, not Jaime's whispers, not this hollow thing they call peace. If she had lived, Ned said quietly. You might have broken her heart just as you broke every promise you made to yourself. Robert flinched as if struck. Then he laughed, a short, joyless sound. You always did know where to stick the knife. I speak truth, Ned said. You asked for it by coming down here. I came down here to remember who I am, Robert said. Not the fat king on a stolen throne. The man who took up a hammer and smashed dragons for love of a wolf maid. Daenerys's breath caught. There it was again, the word that had defined her life without her will. Dragons. Smashed as if they were pottery. I killed Rhaegar, Robert said. Smashed his chest open and watched the rubies spill into the trident. But it wasn't enough. The line lingered. The babe and the boy. His jaw worked. I should have killed them myself, not left it to Tywin and his dogs. Daenerys pressed harder into the stone. The torchlight made Robert's shadow sway like something monstrous against the wall. They're dead, Ned said. His voice held a thread of iron. You saw their heads on spikes. You've told that tale enough times. Robert said, and I remember every telling. His hand tightened on the hilt of his sword. Varys whispers still of dragon spawn across the sea, you know. Little silver wraiths with purple eyes. He says they are shadows, nothing more. But shadows grow. Across the sea. a version of her life that had not come to pass. Viserys and a baby sister in some narrow, stinking alley, begging for bread in a land that spoke another tongue. Men with knives seeking them in the night. She shivered, though the cold had already seeped into her bones. "If there are any left," Robert went on, "I'll see them dead before I go to my grave. I won't have the realm torn apart again because some fool wants a dragon's chair." "You came here to speak of Lyanna," Ned said, "not of slaughtering children." "I came here to speak of you," Robert snapped, "of the realm, of what I need. I need a hand who will tell me when I am being a fool, who will keep me from my worst self." "You have one," Ned said. "He lies in the ground at the Aery because you wouldn't listen." Robert flinched again, the name of Jon Arryn hanging unspoken. "I won't lose you too, Ned," he said softer. "You'll come south, you'll bring your girls. We'll bind our houses close as they were meant to be. A wolf and a lion and a stag, all at one table." His mouth twisted. "And if there's any dragon left in the world, we'll deal with that together." Ned said nothing for a long moment. The torch flames sputtered. The shadows shivered. Daenerys could feel her own heartbeat faintly in her throat. "At what cost?" he asked at last. "To my house, to my children, to my wards." Robert snorted. "That little silver girl of yours?" he said. "You northern men collect strays like other folk collect hounds. She's pretty enough. Marry her to some bannerman with more ambition than sense. Let him boast of her hair in his cups." Daenerys's fingers dug into the stone until her knuckles ached. "She is more than that," Ned said quietly. "All girls are more than that in someone's eyes," Robert replied. "There's still coin on a table to kings." He sighed. "Gods, listen to me. I sound like Tywin." He shifted, the metal of his armor chinking softly. "You'll come," he said, as if the matter were already settled. "You always do what's right, Ned, even when it hurts." He turned then and lumbered back toward the stairs, his torch throwing wild shadows. For a moment, as he passed, the light fell full on Daenerys's hidden face. She held herself utterly still. If he saw the pale gleam of her hair where it had slipped free of her hood, if he noted the violet of her eyes, he gave no sign. His boots thudded on the steps. His breath echoed. Then he was gone. Eddard Stark lingered a moment longer before Lyanna's statue. "I have done many things that were right," he murmured, "and many that were necessary. They are not always the same." Daenerys closed her eyes. The words settled into her like stones, joining all the others piling up in the dark. She encountered the Queen by accident, or so she told herself. The morning after the Crypts, Winterfell thrummed with the restless energy of too many people crammed into walls meant for fewer. The yard was full of practice bouts and grooms wrestling with high-strung southern horses unused to the cold. The kitchens smoked and clattered. Servants hurried with armfuls of linens. The king's men shouted for wine. The queen's ladies sighed about the draft and the lack of proper mirrors. Daenerys sought quiet where she could find it. She wandered the inner galleries, where stark history hung on walls in faded threads. Hunts and battles, weddings and feasts, a long succession of wolves and winters. She was studying a scene of some ancient king driving back raiders from the coast when the soft rustle of silk made her turn. Cersei Lannister stood framed in the archway, the light from a narrow window turning her hair to molten gold. Two guards lingered discreetly at a distance. No ladies fluttered at her elbow. For once, she was alone. Daenerys dipped in as proper a curtsy as she could manage with her heart suddenly in her throat. "Your Grace, rise," Cersei said. Her voice was smooth, low, without obvious warmth. "You're one of the northern girls, are you not? I keep seeing gray rabbits scurrying out of sight." Daenerys straightened. "I am Daena Snow, your Grace, Lord Stark's ward." "Snow," Cersei repeated, tasting the word. "How charming. Bastard of the North, is it? Or some other little indiscretion?" Daenerys kept her face carefully blank. "I am told I was orphaned in the war, your Grace." A great many people were orphaned in the war, Cersei said. She stepped closer, eyes narrowing slightly as she took in Daenerys' features. Most of them never end up in a lord's hall. Fewer still at his table. Daenerys fought the urge to reach for the hood she was not wearing. Lord Stark is kind, she said. It sounded thin even to her own ears. Kind, Cersei echoed. Yes, that's one word for him. She moved to stand beside Daenerys, ostensibly studying the same tapestry. You have unusual coloring for a northerner. My mother was from the Vale, Daenerys lied, borrowing Maester Luwin's old half-truth. So I am told. The Vale breeds falcons, not doves, Cersei mused. But not dragons. Her gaze flicked sideways, sharp as a blade. Tell me, girl, have you ever seen King's Landing? No, your grace, Daenerys said. Only in drawings and songs. You're not missing much, Cersei said. Filth and crowds and men who think themselves important because they wear the right bit of metal on their cloaks. Her mouth curved, humorless. Still, there is a certain beauty to it. From a distance. All white stone and red roofs and the sea beyond. I was born in the north, Daenerys said quietly. Winterfell is the only beauty I know. Born here? Cersei turned fully to her now, interest finally sharpened. Is that so? Daenerys realized her misstep too late. She had never been good at this, at the careful dance of words. Stark bluntness had seeped into her bones. I meant raised here, she amended. From very small. The years blur. Cersei's eyes lingered on her hair, her eyes, the set of her jaw. You remind me of someone I saw once, a long time ago. A child in a courtyard, clinging to her madman father's cloak while he shrieked for fire. Daenerys' heart lurched. I don't know who you mean, your grace. No, Cersei said. Of course you don't. She stepped back, the momentary intensity smoothing away. Be careful, little Snow, she added lightly. The South is not kind to girls who don't know their place, or their parentage. I have no intention of going south, Daenerys said before she could swallow the words. Cersei's smile sharpened. Then you know less than you think, she said. Robert will have his way. He always does. And your lord is not half so hard as he pretends. She swept away then, silk whispering, guards falling into step behind her. Her perfume, sharp, citrus, undercut with something musky, lingered in the air. Daenerys stood alone in the gallery, her reflection faint in the glass of the narrow window. For a moment, in the warped pane, she saw not herself but a thinner, smaller girl in a southern courtyard, pale hair tangled, eyes wide with terror as a man in red and gold screamed for wildfire. She blinked, and Winterfell's stone returned. If Cersei suspected, she would tell Robert. If Jaime had guessed, he might whisper in her ear. Lannisters did not keep secrets out of mercy. They kept them as coins to spend when it best suited them. The thought made Daenerys' skin prickle. She traced the embroidered wolf on the nearest tapestry, finger following the line of its back. Whatever she had been born, whatever ghosts her face conjured, she had run with these wolves, bled in their yard, prayed under their trees. If she went south, she would carry that with her as armor. Tyrion Lannister liked high places. Daenerys had noticed it on the road into Winterfell, how he'd ridden ahead to look over the drop where a hill fell away, how his gaze kept sliding upward to towers and battlements. Now, 2 nights after the king's arrival, she found him perched on the outer wall, a skin of wine at his elbow, staring north as the snow came down in small, hesitant flakes. Jon was there too, wrapped in his cloak, hands cupped around a mug for warmth rather than for the ale it held. They were an odd pair, the bastard and the dwarf, both out of place at the king's feast below. Daenerys hesitated at the top of the stair. This was their haunt, she knew. She had heard Arya teasing Jon about his new little lion friend. But the hall below was full of Robert's laughter again, and Cersei's narrowed eyes, and she could not bear another hour of pretending her skin didn't itch. She stepped onto the wall walk. If I keep finding you up here, she said lightly, I'll begin to think you're avoiding the warmth like a true northerner." Jon half smiled when he saw her. Tyrion turned, and in the torchlight his face looked older than his years, lined not by age but by something like weariness. "Lady Snow," he said, bowing from his seated position with surprising grace. "Come to freeze your pretty ears off with us misfits? Better my ears than my wits," she said, approaching. "There's enough wine below to drown a castle." "Ah, but what a glorious drowning," Tyrion said. He patted the parapet beside him. "Will you join us?" She sat, arranging her cloak around her. The stone was cold even through the fur. Beyond the wall, the dark pressed close, the trees a jagged line against the night. The sky was a black bowl pricked with a few stubborn stars. "What do you see when you look out there?" Tyrion asked, gesturing with his cup. "Snow," Jon said. "Trees," Daenerys added. "A whole lot of nothing that wants to kill you if you step into it without proper preparation," Tyrion concluded. "Still, I prefer it. Honest in its way. The North doesn't pretend to be kind." "You don't think the South is honest?" Daenerys asked. He snorted. "The South is a garden of lies. Beautiful, well-tended, with thorns under every flower." He studied her. "You don't sound eager to see it." "I have no desire to leave Winterfell," she said. "But you will," he said. "Our gracious king has made his wishes known. Eddard Stark will be hanged, and hands drag their households with them like chains. His pretty red-haired daughter to charm princes, his wild one to scandalize septas. His bast." He caught himself, glancing at Jon. "His ward, perhaps, as well." "I am of no value to a court," Daenerys said. "I have no lands, no name." "Oh, you have a name," Tyrion said quietly. "Several, I'd wager. Only some of them are spoken aloud." Jon shifted. "What do you mean?" Tyrion sipped his wine. "I mean that I have read a book or two in my time," he said. "I know what dragons spawn look like. The gods make few molds like that." His gaze met Daenerys's, sharp and tired and not unkind. "You needn't fear me, girl. Dragons and lions have more in common than either would like to admit." Her hand tightened on the stone. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, though the denial felt thin. "Of course you don't," he said, just as Jon here has never wondered why his Lord Father avoids certain questions. Jon stiffened. Tyrion went on, more gently. "We are all cripples in some way. Some of us wear it where the world can see. Others carry it in their names, in the places where their blood does not fit the neat little boxes men draw." "You speak dangerous words," Daenerys said. "I speak true ones," he replied. "Truth is always dangerous in the company of kings." Jon set his cup down with a soft click. "If you mean to threaten her." "Threaten?" Tyrion looked genuinely offended. "Seven hells, boy. I'm offering advice." "And what advice is that?" Daenerys asked. He tipped his head back, studying the stars. "Learn to wear your masks," he said. "Decide which name you will answer to in which hall. The Northmen see a girl Lord Stark has taken pity on. Let them. The Queen sees a curiosity she might sharpen and use. Let her underestimate you. And if the time comes when a dragon's name will save you more than it will damn you," he shrugged, "you'll know." "How?" she asked. "How could I ever know that?" "When you are old enough to ask the right price for it," he said simply. "Names are coin. Don't spend yours where it buys you nothing." The wind tugged at his hair, at his cloak. For a moment he looked very small against the vast dark beyond the wall. "And you?" Daenerys asked. "What name do you spend?" He smiled crookedly. "Lannister," he said. "It opens doors that would otherwise be closed. It also paints a target on my back big enough for any archer. Such is the way of great houses." Jon gave a bitter little laugh. "I have only one name," he said. "Snow. It opens nothing." "Ah," Tyrion said. "But it frees you, too. There are expectations on lions and wolves. None on bastards. You can be whoever you like, if you live long enough." Daenerys thought of that as they sat in silence. 3 small figures on a wall too big for them. Snowflakes melted on her lashes. Far below, the hall roared on, oblivious. The world beyond the trees waited, indifferent to what names they wore. The decision, when it came, felt less like a choice than the snapping of a trap. Daenerys was summoned to Eddard Stark's solar late on the 3rd night of the king's visit. The guard at the door gave her a curious glance but stepped aside. Inside, the room smelled of wax and parchment and cold hearthstone. A map of the 7 kingdoms lay weighed down on the table with daggers. Letters lay scattered around it like small, white bones. Ned stood behind the table, hands braced on the wood, head bowed. Catelyn sat in a chair by the hearth, a folded letter in her lap. Her knuckles were white where they gripped it. "You sent for me, my lord?" Daenerys asked. The old habit of the title clung to her tongue, no matter what name had been pressed into her bones. He looked up. In the flicker of candlelight, he seemed older again, the lines around his mouth deeper, the streaks of gray more pronounced. Whatever he had wrestled with, he had not come away unscarred. "I did," he said. "Come in. Shut the door." She obeyed. The room felt smaller with the door closed, the sounds of Winterfell muffled to a faint murmur. "Sit," Catelyn said, gesturing to the chair opposite hers. Her voice was controlled, but Daenerys heard the strain. Daenerys remained standing. "I would rather stand," she said softly. "If I may." Ned's mouth twitched, as if the refusal was familiar. "As you like." He straightened. "The king has asked me to be his hand." "And you have said yes," Daenerys guessed. There was no triumph in the words, only weariness. "I have," he said. "Because he is your friend," she said. "Because he asked. Because the realm needs you. Because Jon Arryn is dead," he said. "Because I fear why. Because Lisa writes of lions in the council chamber and daggers in the dark. Because if I stay here and turn my back, I may live to see the realm fall apart around my children's ears." "And mine," Catelyn said quietly. Daenerys's gaze flicked to her. "And what of Winterfell?" she asked. "Of Robb, Bran, Rickon, Sansa, Arya, Jon." "They will remain," Ned said. "Robb will act as my castellan. Catelyn will counsel him. Bran and Rickon are too young to know much but mischief. Sansa and Arya will come south with me." Daenerys swallowed. "And me?" He held her gaze. "And you?" No, the word escaped before she could temper it. "My place is here." "Your place," Catelyn said sharply, "is where my lord says it is." Daenerys turned to her. "With respect, my lady, my place has always been uncertain," she said. "A ward, a guest, a secret. You would send that to King's Landing? To the court of the man who wants all of my blood dead?" Ned flinched at her bluntness. Catelyn's jaw tightened. "If you stay," Ned said, "you will be in as much danger as if you go. The King's Court will not forget you just because you are not under their noses. They will remember and talk. Cersei already looks where she should not. Jaime's tongue is a sword. If lions suspect there is prey in the north, they will find a way to hunt it." "And if I go?" Daenerys asked. "Will Robert Baratheon look at me one day over his wine and remember the color of my father's eyes?" "I do not intend to put you in his sight more than necessary," Ned said. "You will go as companion to my daughters. A northern girl, no more. King's Landing is a city of 100,000 faces. One more snowflake will melt in the pack. Unless a single ray of sun touches it," Daenerys murmured. He looked pained. "If there were another way." "There is," Catelyn said. "Send her east as you should have done years ago. Put her on a ship from White Harbor. Let her vanish where she was meant to vanish." Ned's eyes closed briefly. "I've had this fight with myself 1,000 times, he said. "Every time I walked past the nursery. Every time I watched her spar with Jon or plait Sansa's hair. I told myself the danger was distant, that Robert would never come north again, that dragons dies when you don't speak of them." He opened his eyes. "Now he is here, and we are out of time." Daenerys's throat felt tight. "If you send me away now, she said. "After all these years, it will look like guilt, like a man hiding a sin. You know that." He did. She saw the knowledge in his face. "King's Landing is a pit," he said. "But it is a pit I can stand in with you. I can place you where eyes are fewer. I can pull you away if danger grows too near." "And if danger grows from you?" she asked. "If Robert bares his teeth and you stand between us?" He was silent for a long heartbeat. The fire popped in the hearth. "Then," Eddard Stark said, "I will remember the choice I made when I took you from that burning city, and I will make it again." The room seemed to tilt. For a moment she was that baby, nameless, weightless, carried in the arms of a man who smelled of steel and smoke, away from a hall of green fire. "You are not my father," she said almost gently, "but you are the man who chose me. I won't forget that." She looked at Catelyn. The Lady of Winterfell's eyes were suspiciously bright, her mouth a hard line. "You think I am a danger to your children," Daenerys said. "I think the world is," Catelyn replied. "But you are a spark among dry leaves. Men will look at you and see kings and madness and dragons. They won't see the girl who pulled Arya off the roof when she climbed too high, or the one who rode all night to fetch help when Robb's mare foaled wrong. You will always mean more than yourself to them. That is what frightens me." Daenerys nodded slowly. It was more honesty than she had expected. "Then we are alike," she said. "Your children are Stark. You are Tully. I am Targaryen. None of us chose it. All of us bear it." Ned exhaled. "We leave in a fortnight," he said. "Robert would fly on the morrow, but his horses and men are not so eager as he. You'll have time to say your farewells. Pack what you need. Speak with Maester Luwin if you wish to take books. Books, as ink and parchment could shield her from steel." "Well," Daenerys said. Her voice sounded oddly steady in her own ears. "It seems I will see King's Landing after all." As she left the solar, the map of the realm caught her eye. The north loomed large on it, stark and vast. The south seemed small by comparison, dense and busy. Somewhere on that parchment, a tiny crown marked a city she had never seen and that had once been her whole world. Soon it would be again. But she would not walk its streets as a ghost. The morning they left, Winterfell seemed to lean in close, as if listening. The sky was a pale smear of light over the eastern wall, the sun not yet fully risen. Frost silvered the cobbles. The breath of men and horses turned the air into a shifting fog. The royal banners snapped and popped. Wagons creaked as they were urged into line. Dogs barked, children cried. Somewhere, a rooster crowed stubbornly against the cold. Daenerys stood beside the horse Lord Stark had chosen for her, a sturdy gray mare bred for the northern hills, not the fancy palfreys of southern courts. The mare snorted and tossed her head as grooms tightened the girth. Daenerys smoothed a hand down her neck, murmuring nonsense. The gesture calmed them both. She wore her warmest riding leathers beneath her cloak, the stark gray almost indistinguishable from the Targaryen silver of her hair where it escaped her hood. Her sword, more knife than blade, a slim thing Jon had begged from Roderick Castle for her 14th name day, hung at her hip, hidden under the cloak's fall. Robb moved through the yard, speaking with the steward, clasping hands with the men who would ride with his father then return. Bran clung to his sleeve, eyes red. Little Rickon sobbed openly into Catelyn's skirts. Sansa stood straight-backed, face pale but composed, Arya beside her, scowling fiercely as if daring anyone to see the wetness in her eyes. Jon stood slightly apart, the hood of his cloak low, ghost at his side like a patch of snow given flesh. The direwolf's red eyes watched everything, unblinking. King Robert's men milled near the gate, impatient. The king himself laughed with Renly over some jest, already swigging from a wineskin though the day was barely born. Cersei sat her horse with perfect poise, her expression carved from ice. The royal children huddled in their cloaks, their southern blood shivering at the cold. Eddard Stark mounted his horse with a practiced ease. He looked over his gathered household. his gaze lingering on each face as if committing them to memory. When his eyes found Daenerys, something passed there. Regret, resolve, a hint of fear quickly banked. He nudged his horse forward. "Robb," he said, "you have the north until I return." Robb straightened as if a weight had settled on his shoulders. "I'll not fail you, father." "You won't," Ned said. Then softer, so only those closest heard, "You're my son." He leaned down to kiss Bran's hair, to ruffle Rickon's. Catelyn he held for a heartbeat longer than courtesy demanded, something unspoken passing between them. Then he turned to Jon. "Come here," he said. Jon stepped forward, face carefully blank. Ghost pressed against his leg. For a moment, Daenerys saw them as a cut from some tapestry. The solemn lord, the bastard son, the white wolf, frost in their hair. "If I had time, I would tell you," Ned began, then stopped. He shook his head, the words too large for the space between them. "You're a good man, Jon. Your honor does you credit. Remember that wherever you go." Jon swallowed. "I'll take the black soon," he said, the decision that had been brewing in him finally given voice. Uncle Ben-Jen said. "You are young yet," Ned said. "The wall will still be there in a year, or 10. His gaze flicked briefly to Daenerys, then back. "Some truths must wait, but when the time is right." He broke off again, frustrated. "Take care of your brothers," he said instead. "And your sisters. They'll need you." Jon nodded, jaw tight. Ned laid a hand on his head, a gesture both blessing and farewell, then turned his horse toward the gate. Daenerys stepped forward before she could think better of it. "My Lord Stark," she called. He reined in, looking back. "Thank you," she said. Two small words for 14 years of shelter. "For all of it." He studied her, as if seeing not the girl before him, but the infant he had first taken into his arms. "Keep your head down in King's Landing," he said. "Listen more than you speak, and never forget who you are, no matter what name you wear." "I won't," she said. He hesitated, then added, "You are not your father." It was the kindest thing he could have said, and the cruelest. She bowed her head to hide the sting in her eyes. Sansa hugged Catelyn stiffly, promised to write every week, to remember her prayers. Arya flung herself at her mother, then at Robb, then at Bran, leaving smears of snot and tears on every cloak. When she turned to Jon, she punched his arm hard enough to make him grunt, then buried her face against his chest. "Don't let them make you a lady," he muttered into her hair. "Don't let them make you a crow," she shot back, words muffled. Finally, it was Daenerys' turn. Catelyn stepped forward, hands twisting in her skirts. For a heartbeat, Daenerys thought she might offer some blessing, some grudging wish for safety. Instead, the Lady of Winterfell said, "Look after them, the girls." "My lord." "I will," Daenerys said. Felt like an oath, binding and heavy. Robb came last. He pulled her into a rough, brotherly embrace. "Bring us back good stories of the South," he said, trying for lightness. "Fattened nights and overcooked food. And silk too thin to keep out a northern breeze," she replied, managing a smile. He sobered. "If you need anything," he began. "I'll send a raven," she finished. They both knew how thin that promise was, stretched over miles and politics and kings. She turned at last to Jon. They stood for a moment in the midst of all the movement, the chaos swirling around them like snow. "Write to me," she said. "If I can," he replied. "If the ravens don't freeze in the air." She huffed a laugh. "If you join the watch before I return, I'll bring you a feather from the south," she said. "Proof that there are birds down there who don't know what snow is." "I'll believe that when I see it," he said. His eyes searched hers. "Remember what Tyrion said," he added more seriously, "about Nam. Is." "I will," she said. "And remember what I said, about wolves and ghosts." He smiled, quick and crooked. "We haunt together," he said. It was a childish phrase, born on a wall at sunset, but now it felt like something more. She reached up and pressed her forehead briefly to his, a gesture she'd learned from the wildlings who sometimes traded at Winterfell's gates. He startled, then held still. Then she was in the saddle, the mare shifting beneath her, the column moving. The gate yawned open. Winterfell's walls rose around her like vast gray hands. As they rode out, she looked back once. Jon stood on the steps, Ghost at his side, Robb and Catelyn and the younger boys flanking him. The castle loomed behind them, solid, enduring. She did not know when or if she would see it again. The Kingsroad stretched before them like a scar. At first, the land on either side was as familiar to Daenerys as the lines of her own hand. The low stone walls marking fields that in summer would be green, the stands of pine and spruce where she had hunted with Robb and Jon, the little streams that would swell with meltwater come spring. The snow lay thick and unbroken save for the churned track of their passage, horses' hooves and wagon wheels grinding it into gray slush. The royal party moved at the king's pace, which was to say irregularly. Robert would spur ahead for an hour, then call a halt when a village appeared with half-decent ale. His laughter echoed back along the column. His curses did, too. Cersei rode in the middle ranks, surrounded by her guards, her children close. The Lannister crimson was a bright wound against the North's muted palette. Daenerys rode with the Stark girls near the rear of the leading group, close enough to answer if Eddard called, far enough that they could speak without every word reaching kingly ears. Arya complained about the cold, then about the food. Sansa about the cold, then about the lack of proper beds. Daenerys listened more than she spoke, letting their voices fill the emptiness. At midday, when the sun was a weak blur behind a veil of cloud, they halted to rest the horses. Fires were lit. Men stamped their feet, blew on their fingers. The king demanded more wine. The queen demanded better tents. The road seemed to sigh under their weight. Daenerys dismounted gratefully, feeling the stiffness in her thighs. She led her mare to the edge of the camp, where a stand of bare-branched trees offered the illusion of privacy. Beyond, the land rolled away, white and gray and endless. She closed her eyes and listened. The north sounded different once you were outside Winterfell's walls. The wind had more space to move its song wilder. Somewhere far off, a crow called, its voice harsh. She smelled wood smoke, horse, leather, the faint metallic tang of distant water. When she opened her eyes, Eddard Stark was standing a little way off, watching her. He had shed his gauntlets, flexing his fingers in the cold. "Your seat's improved," he said, by way of greeting. "You don't ride like a sack of grain anymore." "High praise," she said. "I've had good teachers." "Robb and Jon are proud of that, you know," he said. "They think they made a knight of you." "I think they made a wolf of me," she replied. His mouth twitched. "Wolves and dragons," he said. "The gods have a cruel humor." She hesitated. "Do you regret it?" she asked. "Taking me, lying for me, bringing me into your hall." He was silent long enough that she wondered if she'd overstepped. Then he said slowly, "I regret many things. I regret that my father went to King's Landing answering a summons from a mad king. I regret that my brother followed. I regret that Lyanna died in a bed of blood." His gaze drifted south, to where the road disappeared. "I do not regret saving a child from a butcher's knife, even if that child might bring knives to your door one day," she pressed. "If that day comes, I'll face it," he said. "I've never been one to hide from my own choices." She studied him. "You and the king speak often of the past," she said, "of what was lost, of what should have been, but you rarely speak of what comes next." "What comes next," he said, "is a city full of men who smile and sharpen daggers behind their backs, a boy on a throne who is not what he seems, a queen who plays a game none of us care to admit exists, and somewhere across the sea, if the whispers are true, a brother and sister your age, with your hair dreaming of a crown." "Not anymore," she said. He looked at her sharply. "There is only one," she added, "across the sea, if that Viserys died in this version of the world. I took his place at your gate. The other girl, she is me." He exhaled. Sometimes I wonder, he admitted, if there's another world where you grew up with him, where I sailed east instead of riding north, where I left you both to your fate. And in that world, she said, perhaps I would have your head on a spike for what you did to my father. He did not flinch at the image. Perhaps, he said, or perhaps you'd be dead in an alley by now, traded between men who like the look of your hair. His voice hardened. We cannot live in all the worlds we imagine, Daenerys. Only this one. And in this one, you ride south under my banner. She turned that over, feeling the shape of it. Daenerys, she repeated. It still felt too large in her mouth. It's strange hearing you say it. It is your name, he said. Whatever you choose to do with it. Before she could answer, a shout went up from the camp. They both turned. Bran's wolf, Summer, had grown restless near the baggage carts. Arya was arguing with a guard over how far she could wander. Sansa stood stiffly with the Queen's ladies, trying to make conversation about embroidery. The king bellowed for more wine. The road waited. Ned sighed. Mount up, he said. We'll make for the next holdfast before dark. No sense giving the wildlings a chance to count our noses. As Daenerys swung into her saddle, she caught sight of Tyrion Lannister watching her from his pony, expression unreadable. Jaime rode near the front, white cloak bright. Cersei's gaze slid past her without pause. Names, she thought, settling herself. Masks, coin. She touched the hilt of her small sword under her cloak. Beneath the leather of her glove, her skin felt too hot for the cold air. The dragon in her blood shifted, restless. Let them have their king, their court, their games, she thought. I will learn their rules, and when the time comes, I will decide which name to spend. For now, she was Daena Snow, ward of Winterfell, riding south in a column of banners and noise. But beneath that snow, coiled and waiting, something older slept. The road led toward King's Landing. Toward secrets and danger and fire. She tightened her grip on the reins and followed it, eyes open.